Very good afternoon to one and all. Welcome to the World Health Day 22 program, Our Planet, Our Health. Before I welcome the gathering, I request the dignitaries to come on to the stage. Dr. Indu Murthy, who's our chief guest today, and the Sector Head of Climate, Environment and Sustainability from CSTEP. More about her, and request Aishwarya to introduce. And I request my beloved principal and Dr. Veda Vaibhav and Dr. Shalini Lohi, Vice Principal against Academics, and also Professor in Community Medicine. I also request Dr. Hemant, Registrar Academic Administration, and also Professor in Community Medicine. Over to Anisha.
Important thing, and we do not realize it until we use it. Let us take good care of it. I would like to ask two questions. One, are we able to reimagine a world with clean air, water, and food that are available to all? Are we able to reimagine cities which are livable and people have control over the health and the health of the planet? Is it possible? I think our answers will be no, for at least for the time being. We have a long way to go to make us know a big yes. Good afternoon, all. I'm Dr. Aishwarya Dekobal, postgraduate, on behalf of the Department of Community Medicine. Extend a warm welcome, which is the founding day of WHO, and celebrated to raise the health issue. The theme for World Health Day is Our Planet, Our Health. Now let us inaugurate the World Health Day 2022 by awarding the class. I finally invite all the dignitaries organized to join us. So we listen to the Ramaiah anthem.
श्री गणनाथुनी शारदा सत्कबुलनु सहज योगी मुनुलन सुरुलन देव ब्राह्मण धन्युनी सकलांतर्यामी हरिणी भजन्तु
ನೆನಪಿನಲ್ಲಿರಿಸಿದಾರರು ಕಟ್ಟಿದ ಕನಸಿನ ಸಾಮ್ರಾಜ್ಯವಿದು.
ದೀಪದೊಳು ಪ್ರದೀಪಗಳ ಬೆಳಗುವ ಶ್ರದ್ಧಾ ಸ್ಥಾನವಿದು.
ಅರಿವಿನ ದಿಗಂತದಾಚೆಗೆ ಜಿಗಿಯುವ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲವಿದು. ಗೃಹ ಗೃಹದಲ್ಲಿ ಗೃಹ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನದ ಸೋಪಾನವಿದು. ಮಿತಿಯಿಲ್ಲದ ಅಮಿತ ಜ್ಞಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧನ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರವಿದು. ಪ್ರತಿಭೆಯ ಸಾಧನೆ ಮಾಡಲು ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯ ಕೇಂದ್ರವಿದು. ಅಜ್ಞಾನದ ಕತ್ತಲೆ ನೀಗುವ ಸುಜ್ಞಾನದ ಸೂರ್ಯನ ರಶ್ಮಿದು.
ಜಗದೋದ್ಧಾರದ ಅಂಗನಸನು ಹೊತ್ತಿದ ಅರಿವಿನ ತಾಣವಿದು.
ಅರಿವಿನ ಹಣತೆಯು ಬೆಳಕನ್ನು ಚೆಲ್ಲಿದೆ. ಅಸಂಖ್ಯಾತ ಕಿರಣಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲೆಡೆ ಹೊರಹೊಮ್ಮಿವೆ. ಜಯವೆನ್ನುವ ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥಾನಕ್ಕೆ.
Kindly be seated. I would like to invite our beloved Professor and HOD, Department of Community Medicine, Dr. Lenta, to deliver the welcome notes and overview of World Health Day.
Very good afternoon to one and all here who are assembled here. Made this event possible. The theme for this World Day 2022 is Our Planet, Our Earth. I think this is one of the topic which is very hot and interesting, and very closely we'll be celebrating the World Environment Day. And this seems overlaps with the concept of climate change, and which is going to get connected with World Environment Day as well. So this underlines the importance of caring for our Mother Earth. So we are looking at, should we redefine ourselves, reimagine ourselves, and see that our Earth will be a better place to live with. I think you all agree with me. We are facing the global crisis in terms of health and as well as climate. We are, because of various climatic changes and compounded by the existing pandemic, we have rise in the heart diseases, asthma, and airborne infections, cancer, etc. It is recommended that, it is observed that about more than 3 million deaths in the world are due to avoidable environmental causes, of which climate change is one of the most commonest contributory causes. So this, and 90% of the breathing, we are all breathing unhealthy air. So this calls for urgent action from our end. And next slide. So are we able to reimagine a world where you can get clean air, water, and food, which are available to all of us? Because we are talking now in terms of availability, affordability, accessibility, and quality. Not only healthcare, it be anything. So are we getting all this? Where economics are focused on health and well-being, do we have sufficient budget allocated for the well-being of individuals? Or where cities are livable and people have control over their health and their health-related problems. So when we look at these, and if we are able to achieve this, that's when we are going to achieve our goals. Next. So to redefine and reimagine your world, the government, the WHO, has emphasized certain actionable points which the different stakeholders need to take. And I think the World Health Day celebration usually a topic of importance, public health importance, which is important from every perspective and every corner of this globe. The topic is chosen and we need to address this, and that's the topic for this year. So I'll just focus on these two important topics which we are directly concerned, the healthcare facilities and individuals, as what we need to do being in a medical institutions. Next. So and healthcare facilities, we need to chart out a program where we can try to address these solutions which have been given, and these are, I think, feasible and practicable. Only thing is we need to apply our mind and attitude towards it, positive attitude towards. So support efforts to reduce healthcare waste. In fact, biomedical waste is one of the areas where community medicine and our institution is known for. And this is very precisely told that reduce your waste, reduce, reuse, recycle waste is very important. Provide sustainability, grow local foods, and ensure good, healthy food choices for the people to make, and decarbonize health facilities. Remove the carbon prints in your place. Reduce the paper use. Make it digital as far as possible. And identify opportunities to save energy wherever feasible. And ensure safe, clean water at all healthcare facilities, because you have patients, you have caregivers. It's important that we do not have contaminated water to be given to people there. And support purchase of and green friendly, environmental friendly products, so that you minimize the waste generation itself. Lastly but not the least, advocate for health and to be the center for climate change. So these are some of the facility wise we need to take decisions. And I request Madam to see if we can take such some of these steps forward for our institution to see that by the end of World Environment we are able to achieve some of these actionable points. Lastly, for the individuals, share your story. As an individual, we can make a difference. Only if we act collectively, people will follow. So share your stories, our planet are Earth. Raise your voice and demand climate action to protect your own health. Next. So try to walk or pedal the cycle or once a week at least. I know all of you have cars, bikes, everything. At least make it a point to take one day off for walking or using public transport. Change, and especially the electricity in your classrooms also. Switch off the electricity when you're leaving your classrooms. Unnecessarily don't run the water. And tobacco is a killer and a polluter as well. Say no to tobacco. This is an healthy promotion habit. If you start early in life, you continue to that. Say no to plastic bags wherever possible. Go to the non-plastic bags, cloth bags. These are simple solutions, yet I think these are all practical. Only when we start looking at the smaller solutions, we'll be able to make this environment which is looking threatening and scary, we will be able to get an environment which is much more livable and a beautiful world for all of us to live and for our generations to come. Thank you very much. This is an introduction. At this junction, I thank our chief guest, Dr. Indu Murthy, who has kindly agreed to come today and deliver as guest of the lecture. She is the Secretary from Climate, Environment and Sustainability at CSTEP. More about Aishwarya will be telling. Ma'am, we welcome you. I also welcome Dr. Emma Srinivas Murthy, who was the Chief Executive GS. Because of his commitment, he just came. We wish you all good luck, and he's just left. Thank him as well. We welcome our beloved sweet Veda Rao, Principal and Dean, who's always there for us to encourage to take up such endeavors. Welcome our own Dr. Nui Ma'am, Shalini Nui Ma'am, who's also the Vice Principal Administration. And welcome to you as well. And I welcome Dr. Nehmat, Registrar Administration. Very silent but an effective administrator, I can say. Thank you, Dr. Nehmat. I also have with us Dr. Mr. Shivana sir, who's joined us. Who is the HR legal and legal head. Sir, thank you for joining on this occasion. And Edugopal Shastri sir, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Gokula Education Foundation. Thank you both of you for joining us on this occasion and encouraging our students as well. And I'm also from the Corporate Communications. Thank you very much, sir, for joining the occasion. I have other departmental heads and other faculty from other departments. I can see Dr. Srimati ma'am, Chandra Kiran sir, and please forgive me for mistaking. Welcome you all of you, and also my colleagues and postgraduates who are trying hard to make this program. Welcome you all. And most important, last but not the least, our beloved students who are energetic, who have joined the institution. Today they had a vote of ceremony for the dissection, and it was very, I was a part of it, and I really was nostalgic about that moment because I think that's one moment you must always cherish in your life. I know you will all take it forward, these messages, and you will take forward more of such events in the colleges when you are there on the campus. Welcome to you all. I welcome each one of you here for this program. Thank you very much.
Just like to welcome Ramaiah for taking up this initiative as usual. I'd like to welcome the guest speaker of the day, Dr. Indu K Murthy, Sector Head, Climate, Environment and Sustainability at Center for Science, Technology and Policy, Bangalore. Dr. Indu K Murthy was formerly a consultant scientist at the Center for Sustainable Technologies, Indian Institute of Science, for more than 2 decades. Her major areas of research and policy advocacy include various dimensions of climate change, mitigation and system for land use sectors, greenhouse gas emissions, inventory for land use sector, climate change vulnerability assessment, adaptation to climate change, forest ecology, and citizen science. She is an expert for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change for Greenhouse Gas Inventory Review Process. She is a member of the Commission on Ecosystem Management of the IUCN and a member of the International Platform on Adaptation Metrics. She is an expert involved in national communication with Government of India for land use change and forestry. She is a forestry and climate change consultant to the United Nations, the World Bank, and other multilateral and bilateral agencies. Dr. Indu K Murthy is a contributing author to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Reports, a coordinating lead author for Global Environmental Outlook 6, and a lead author for Geo6 Asia Pacific Reports on Land and Atmosphere. She's an associate editor on the International Journal of Climate Change Strategies and Management and an academic editor on the GLOBE's Climate Editorial Board. She's a member of the Technical Advisory Committee of Andhra Pradesh Mahila Abhivruddhi Society and a board member of SATI Waters Hyderabad. She has published extensively in peer-reviewed journals and also authorized several newspaper articles and blogs. It's our privilege to welcome such a renowned and knowledgeable guest on this day. Everyone, the stage is ours.
Very good afternoon to everyone. First and foremost, let me take this opportunity to wish you all very happy Health Day. You're part of the system. So obviously, there is a lot that's resting on your shoulders moving forward. I know you're just starting your journey. Some of you have been there with the system. So there's a lot that you can do as an individual, like Dr. Lalita was mentioning, but also being part of the system, there are things that you need to be aware of and also do a lot of things that would make the system much more what we call as resilient or adaptable as we move forward. Now, as it is, you would agree with me that the healthcare system as such in India has a lot of issues, challenges, even without the issue of climate change, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So moving forward, the challenges are going to be multifold. You already know there are certain challenges, but then you're going to be looking at much more challenges as we move forward. So I'm kind of taking this opportunity to throw some light on the connect. I mean, you might know certain connections, but then a lot of it is looked in isolation. So here is the sector which basically links each and every walk of life, be it food, be it water, be it the way we manage our ecosystems, our environment, everything is interconnected. So which is why climate change is again another thread which kind of cuts across all these different sectors and what it is going to bring about and how it's going to change and also what it means to the sector. That's the healthcare sector is something that I'm going to be talking about. Will you be scrolling now or is there a thing? It's fine. So first and foremost, as Dr. Lalita already mentioned, our planet is in peril. There are a lot of challenges, and climate change is just one among them. So the global greenhouse gas emissions, as we call it, during the decade, just look at the very recent 10 years. There is the highest as compared to any previous time in human history, which means to say the way we use resources is definitely contributing to the increase in these emissions of these, what we call as greenhouse gases. Now, what are these greenhouse gases? Today, nitrous oxide, methane, of course, carbon dioxide is definitely one of them. You also have the sulfur hexafluorides and a whole lot of other things. Now, these greenhouse gases are being emitted into the atmosphere over a continuous period of time. Now, if we are wondering, okay, why are we talking about it? Just to kind of set the context, let me also tell you that because of what we call as the greenhouse gas effect, I'm sure you remember your school science. It's not, you're not very far off from when you did your schooling. So obviously, when you think about the greenhouse gas effect, it's about how, the sun's rays come and hit the surface of the earth. Some of the energy is absorbed, some of it is reflected back. That's the UV and infrared radiation that we are talking about. Now, what is absorbed is what is converted into heat. In fact, let me also tell you that if that phenomenon did not happen, the Earth would not have been congenial for existence of life at all. The temperatures are maintained at a certain level only because of this particular effect. So now the question is, what went wrong? Why is it that we think that greenhouse gas effect is the cause of what we call as global warming? What is the problem there? Now the reason for this is more and more of these gases and these energy that are hitting the surface of the earth are getting absorbed much more than what it was in the past. Now, why this is happening is because of these greenhouse gases that I'm talking about, which are forming a layer on the surface of the earth. Now, the reason for the increase of these greenhouse gases is, as I said, because of increased use of resources, particularly what we call as fossil fuels, petrol, diesel, and a whole lot of it. Now, interestingly, this coincides with what we call as the Industrial Revolution period, that's 1960 and beyond. Now, which very clearly goes to say that we humans have had a hand in the way this change has happened. So, which is why in 90s at Rio de Janeiro, scientists, policy makers, decision makers, politicians all got together at a conference. That was one of the first of the climate conferences that happened when they took stock of the situation and they realized that something is wrong with the climate system. And they also figured out that humans have a role to play in this particular change. Now, till about, I would say about 5 to even a decade ago, there were a lot of climate skeptics. In the sense, people were arguing that, okay, why are we even talking about this? It could be the natural cycle, because I'm sure you all know of the ice age, right? So maybe it's the climate system which is actually undergoing its natural cycle. Maybe we did not have a role to play with it. Why are we considering ourselves to be the culprits? So do we really need to be concerned about this at all? Now, the answer to that came through science, which very clearly indicated that, yes, we need to be concerned about it. The reason being, when they mapped 800,000 years of the carbon dioxide concentration and the temperature in the Antarctic. Now, if you're wondering how did people even get the 800,000 years of data, this is through what they call as, they track the ice cores that are in the Antarctic, those are extracted, and the trapped air bubbles in these ice cores are analyzed for gas concentration at different periods of time, and they date them. So when they do that, they are able to actually build the concentration of gases over a period of time. So which very clearly shows that there's been a steady increase. But what happened after the 1900s, the rate at which it happened was multifold increase as compared to what had not happened in 800,000 years. So the pace at which the change is happening is definitely much faster than what history has seen, which is why we need to be concerned, and which is why you and I are also even here talking about climate change as an issue. Next one. So now, what is this change that the world has seen? So now this is a summary of a report which is just 2 days old, right? And what does this report say? This is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a body of 300 to 400 scientists from around the world who get together and put together, publish scientific information on the climate system, something called as mitigation, which is to do with how much is the emissions, what are people doing around the world to even address the problem. The other is about impacts, vulnerability, and adaptation. So how is it impacting the system? Who is vulnerable? What is making people vulnerable? And what is it that would help people to adapt? And the first of the reports is what is called as a physical science basis, which talks about the science itself. Okay, what is happening? Whether it is the water cycle, the climate cycle, or anything else, everything comes under this. Now, these are basically bricks. People who are in the medical field are used to bricks because your books are quite massive in themselves. I know it because I have a brother who's a doctor himself, so obviously I've seen that these are quite a load that you carry, and these IPCC reports, as they are called, are quite large in themselves. Now, what it says is that climate change has already caused substantial damages and increasingly irreversible losses. Now, when we talk about irreversible losses, we are talking about systems which have tipped and which cannot be gotten back into their original form. So we've lost them forever. We're talking about certain terrestrial systems, we're talking about certain freshwater systems, we're also talking about certain coastal systems. And of course, approximately 3 to 3.6 billion people are living in these regions which are highly vulnerable to climate change. Take India, for example, we have a very long coastline. People who are living close to the coast are quite vulnerable because sea level rise is a reality. Now, if sea level rise, what scientists say, as far as the history goes, the increase in the sea level has been about 1.2 to 1.3 meters already in the historical past. Now, moving forward, in a worst case scenario, they say a 6 meter rise in the sea level is likely. This is global numbers. So when it's a global average, obviously it's a plus or minus always. So it could be much larger, much higher in some parts of the world, or much lesser also in some parts of the world. But it definitely goes to say that it is changing the coastline completely. A lot of land is getting inundated, which means people who are close to these land coasts are under threat. The infrastructure in these places are under threat, and the health risks are also increasing because of that. Now, also, interestingly, wherever climate change impacts us, see, it intersects with areas of what we call as high vulnerability, which is contributing to the humanitarian crisis. And health is a part of all of this, like Dr. Lalita was mentioning. How do we put health context into the dialogue of climate change itself? You can't remove it from the centric circle. Now, more and more of these extreme events, as we call it, it could be a high rainfall event, flooding in cities. Take the case of Chennai, take the case of Andhra Pradesh, Hyderabad, even Bangalore. We all have seen increasing number of heavy rainfall events year after year being reported. There is no change. The pattern seems to be repeating more often than ever before. Talk to any elders in your family, you will obviously hear them say that Bangalore is much warmer than what it was 10 years back. B, the flowering pattern of the trees are changing. If there is any avid bird watcher here, you would also agree that if you've been following patterns of bird migration, if you've been visiting places where migratory birds come, the patterns are changing. Why so? It's all because of changes in the weather patterns. We will come to more of this a little later. Now, also approximately 50 to 75% of the global population could be exposed to life-threatening climatic conditions as we move into the future, closer to the 2100s. But action has to begin today if we need to kind of reduce these large-scale impacts. And obviously, climate change is going to put increasing pressure on food production and access. Now, nutrition is at the heart of health systems, healthcare, and also how healthy people are. So obviously, nutrition is going to be impacted as well. And of course, deaths due to extreme illness are also likely to increase because of climate change. Now, moving on, let's look at potential impacts or effects of climate change. First, from a broader perspective, and then let's deep dive into climate change and health itself. How is it connected? What are the dimensions that need to be considered, especially when you're looking at community medicine? What are the things that become very, very relevant? Now, the impacts, as I already said, is on all kinds of systems. One is, of course, agriculture, because I don't know how many of you are aware that Indian agriculture is largely rain-fed agriculture, which means to say they do not have an assured source of irrigation. Almost 50% of agriculture in India is rain-fed agriculture. So which means to say a timely onset of rainfall is extremely important for the farmer, which is not happening. It's becoming more and more erratic. The onset is usually in the last week of June. If it doesn't happen, the farmer keeps waiting. 1 week, he's trying to sow something. After 2 or 3 weeks, he has to switch the crop or change the variety. The reason being, every crop requires a certain length of the growing period. If it does not get that, it will not attain maturity. It will not give the the grain production or anything to be impacted. So which is why agricultural production is very, very sensitive to the changes in the weather pattern. Now you might see two terms here. One, I'm talking about weather, other I'm talking about climate. There's a very fine difference out here for you to know. Whenever I say weather, I'm talking about year-to-year changes in the way the temperature or the rainfall patterns are. The minute I say climate, for a climate scientist like me, it has to be at least a 30-year average. The trend has to be either an increasing or a decreasing trend in whatever I conclude. If it changes, for instance, temperature in summer is 40 degrees this year, next year if it is 35 degrees, the year after that if it is 32 degrees, I cannot conclude that temperatures in Bangalore are on a declining trend. No, that's not statistically valid as well. So obviously, we require at least a 30-year time frame to conclude that temperatures are decreasing in a particular place or sea level is increasing in a certain place. So obviously, that is a very fine difference between climate and weather. Now, because of climate change, which is long-term impacts that we are talking about, agriculture is one, even the forest ecosystems. I mean, you generally, the first thought that comes to our mind, the minute we think of trees is, okay, they're big and lofty, they're sturdy, unlike annual crops of agriculture, trees may not get impacted, but that's not the fact. Even trees could be impacted. One is the flowering patterns that I talked about. Sometimes there could be what is called as tip drying and death of a tree also because of inadequate water availability, extended periods of drought in a region. Now, this has implications for what we also call as the greenhouse gas emissions. Because, again, back to your school science, photosynthesis, CO2 is actually taken in to produce starch in plants. Now, that is the only natural system which can capture or sink in carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. So, which is why growing trees is good for the environment. Growing trees is also good for addressing the issue of climate change because you're decreasing the content to some extent by growing the tree, at least till the tree is alive and growing. Okay, so the next is about coastal areas, which I already spoke about. Water resources again, water supply, water quality, competition for water is going to be the biggest issue under climate change scenario. We will look at it a little more. And of course, health definitely is at the heart of it. Next one. So now moving on into the issue of how climate crisis is actually a threat to development, at the core of which is health, of course. Now, it threatens to undo the last 50 years of all development that a country like India has already come through. We've done so much: global health, poverty alleviation, even all the infrastructure that we have built could be at threat. Now, with further widening existing health inequalities because of climate change, within populations again, this disparity could increase. And it severely jeopardizes the realization of what we call as a universal health coverage, which is spoken at large and is at the heart of the way the systems function. Next one. So now, whenever we talk about climate impacts, how does it actually impact your health at the end of the day? There are multiple ways that the systems interact. One is, of course, the environmental and the institutional context, which is talking about the vulnerabilities, where systems are quite robust, they are able to cope, but in others, they will not be able to cope. And of course, the social and behavioral context is also very, very important out here. Now, the exposure factor is the crucial thing in a climate system. So whether it is extreme heat, whether it is poor air quality that Dr. Lalita spoke about, whether it is reduced food and water quality in the future, or changes in the infectious agents, which becomes very, very relevant from a medicine perspective, or of course, population displacement could also be a result of climate change, which all have impacts on the health outcomes. Next one. So obviously, climate change is the biggest threat facing humanity. It affects the social and environmental determinants of human health, clean air, safe drinking water, sufficient food, secure shelter, all of these. As per studies between 2030 and 2050, 2030 is not far away, it's just 8 years down the lane. All of us are going to be alive and seeing what is going to happen for sure. Definitely 2050, a lot of youngsters out here can see maybe we won't exist, some of us in this room. But at the same time, it's quite close as we see. It's expected to cause approximately 250,000 additional deaths per annum. So that's quite a large number that we are looking at, primarily because of malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. Now, if you're wondering what has climate change got to do with diarrhea or malaria, I'll come to that in a bit again. Now, the direct damage caused to health, excluding costs in health determining sectors such as agriculture, water, etc., is estimated to be $2 to 4 billion per year by 2030, which is a huge amount that we are looking at. And obviously, areas with weak health infrastructure, they would be not able to cope with the kind of changes we are looking at. Now, first, let's look at temperature. How is it predicted to change, and what are we looking at? Now, all global models, including models in India, when I say models, these are basically simulations of the future based on historical temperatures and taking into consideration the development. So obviously, we look at what are the emissions, how are they going to change in the future, and then model how the temperatures or rainfall are going to change in the future. Now, global models as well as Indian models, as well as some of the modeling work that we have done at CSTEP, where we looked at district level changes in summer maximum temperature, winter minimum temperature, which are very crucial for human health, livestock health, agricultural systems as well. And rainfall patterns clearly show that we are staring at a warmer future and a wetter future. Now, both of these have implications for health. Extreme heat is definitely bad for human health. So obviously, heat cramps, heat exhaustion, heat stroke are going to be on the increase with increasing temperatures. So how do systems begin to plan ahead for coping with these changes? I don't know if some of you know that some of the districts in Karnataka have what is called as a heat action plan. Gulbarga, the northern districts of Karnataka. So they have set timings as to the way when people have to work, when people could be outdoors, everything, the timings, everything changes during the summer period. Now these heat action plans also account for the health infrastructure that need to be in place when they have to cope with any emergencies moving forward. These are some of the direct impacts. The indirect impacts of it could be that some of the regions, based on our own work, we see that some of the districts which have not witnessed in the past 30 years more than 40 degrees are likely to experience temperatures of 40 degrees and more in the future, which means we are looking at more areas becoming, the hotspots of heat waves. So obviously, there again, health infrastructure needs to be improved. Similarly, impact on ecosystem, water, food, disease-carrying agents. These are indirect impacts, and these also mean a lot when you are looking at the health perspective. So when you're looking at floods, as I said, we're looking at a warmer future. The second is a wetter future. So the minute we talk about floods, as you all will agree, one is of course immediate deaths and injuries because of a flooding event. Odisha, increased cyclonic events year after year, and you know the number of casualties. Of course, Odisha had prepared very well, had a good plan in place, so they've reduced the number of deaths due to cyclone. Why? Because they went ahead and start looking at infrastructure that's required for emergency. Their emergency response plans were much robust in the recent years as compared to the past. So that becomes very, very important when you're looking at flood systems. Now, infectious diseases, be it hepatitis, diarrhea, as we know, waterborne diseases are definitely going to be increased. When you have more rainfall, when you have more flooding, these would also be on the increase. And exposure to toxic substances, because what's coming in the runoff is something nobody knows. And take a city like Bangalore, there is waste everywhere, there's no waste segregation. Obviously, you don't know what that water is carrying. So exposure to toxic waste could also be on the increase. And of course, a lot of indirect effects as well, which places an increased demand on the health systems. Next one. So obviously, when you're looking at the causes and the health implications, there are a whole lot of them. Some of them direct, some of them indirect. I'm not getting into details of each and every one of this. I could leave the slides here with you. If anybody is interested in studying this in more depth, you're welcome to look into it. So you can go to the next slide. So now, the next is about drinking water supply. Now, with the drying climate, which means increased temperature, increased dry spells, probably even drought. Now, if you're wondering, okay, she said wetter future, so why are we even talking about drying climate? The reason being, the wetter future says that overall rainfall is going to increase. But when you look at the distribution, what we see is that there are going to be more of what we call as heavy rainfall events, that's greater than 100 millimeter of rainfall per day, or 50 to 100 mm rainfall per day, which leads to flooding. Now, this happens in pockets. It's not evenly distributed. So between these two events, there could be an extended dry spell or a drought period. So which means there is more of drying during that period, which could lead to changes in runoff patterns, land cover, which means the vegetation cover on that particular land, increase in the fire risk. The minute there are fire outbreaks, we also know that smoke, the particulate matter that it carries and how it impacts the lungs is something that you know better than anybody else. So obviously increased sediment, nutrient debris that it carries could lead to a lot of health impacts. And of course, contamination, coastal water intrusion, which we are talking about salinization of the water. It makes it unfit for drinking purposes. So obviously, you are looking at increased risk because of concentration of certain nutrients or chemical contaminants, and also formation of toxic algal blooms. That could also happen, as you see in the pic right on the top on your right, with the green patch out there is an algal bloom, which has very adverse consequences on the quality of water. The next is, of course, air quality. Anybody from Delhi here? Anyone who's from Delhi? So obviously you understand what air quality means to normal breathing, right? So obviously Bangalore, certain pockets of Bangalore also have issues with respect to air quality. Now, how does climate change impact air quality? Weather obviously has a major role in the development, transport, dispersion, deposition of the matter, right? So obviously, air pollution, these episodes are often associated with stationary or slowly moving air masses. Now, the minute we talk about increased rainfall, with rainfall, there are high wind speeds again, or sometimes there is no wind. It becomes static at a certain point in time. Now, these could become pockets of loads of these matter, which could impact the air quality in a particular place. Now, at CSTEP, we have a Center for Air Pollution Studies, where we look particulate matter of different sizes, including 2.5 PM 2.5. We've not looked at the health aspects of this. But this is an area we definitely are wanting to explore more because we have done what is called as emissions inventory. What are the sources? Where are these particulate matter? Where is it concentrated? Now, this obviously gives you indications of where are the problem areas, what is causing the problem. So then you can obviously think of solutions, which includes, of course, health infrastructure. Next one. So now the air quality, as I said already, air increase in the fire events would mean increase the toxic gases, changes in wind pattern, and then of course heat islands in urban spaces. Because of it's not just because of climate change, it's also because of the combined effect of the kind of infrastructure that we built. So a combination of this gives rise to what is called as heat islands. So obviously there is more of heat concentration in certain pockets of the city, which could lead to adverse health impacts. Next. I know for sure she's very attentive, if not anyone. She's changing the slide even before I asked. Thank you. And of course, I think pneumonia, asthma, allergies, these are all seasonal, which all of you are aware of. These, with the changing seasonal patterns, with the changing flowering patterns, because pollen loads, people are allergic. I myself am very allergic to certain kinds of pollen. So I know that, I kind of, I act like an indicator to the changing weather pattern because when there is a certain change, obviously, I get a bout of wheezing. So these are clear signals that, something is changing with the system and there needs to be some solution to it as well. As I already said, particulate matter is definitely one of them, and then toxic gases. In fact, there is enough evidence. You know about the Indonesian fires, right? You must have read about it in the papers. So obviously, there is evidence from the 1997 Indonesia fires that it doesn't restrict yours itself to a boundary. There are transboundary impacts. What happens here to get across? So obviously, doing something good here translates to better structures, better positive impacts elsewhere in the adjoining areas as well. Now, coming to the issue of, malaria that I spoke about. Now, why are we talking about in the context of climate change? The reason being the breeding of mosquitoes, as you know, is influenced by waterboarding and storage. Now, this is a known fact. Now, if you remember, I said in the future it's going to be better, more flooding. So obviously there's going to be more water in the environment. And also these flooding events could last for a longer period. So the breeding window, as we call it, could get expanded. If it is 2 weeks now, it could get expanded to 3 weeks or even more. And there could be localities which were not exposed to this kind of water stagnation. They could become the hotspots of breeding in the future. So which is why when we talk about malaria also, or dengue, chikungunya, anything for that matter, climate change plays a very important role even from that particular context. So obviously, changes in the animal host, the reservoir population, rising sea levels, all of these are connected with health aspects that we are talking about today. Next. Food production, I think I already touched upon the nutritional aspects, so I'm not going to spend more time on this. But I think it's important to remember that maybe to people who live in the cities, we crib a bit, but we end up paying more and we procure what we need to procure and we eat it. Think about people who are in the rural localities, people who are below poverty line, people who are actually producing the crops. They might not be even able to sustain their own lives. So subsistence comes secondary to certain people. Whereas a subsistence it is self-consumption. For them, even earning something becomes very, very important. So for them, nutrition becomes the biggest problem out there. Next one. The other aspect is the social impact of climate change. Now, the biggest fear that people who work in the climate space have is that because of climate change, there could be mass migration, because there could be different areas of probably sub-Saharan Africa and other places that may become unfit for people to exist. with flooding, with sea level rise, why go up to sub-Saharan Africa? Think about Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh has a long coastline. We keep reading about flooding in Bangladesh. We already have a lot of Bangladeshi refugees in India. Now, if a lot of land gets inundated, obviously you're looking at a huge population from an adjoining country, an exodus, which is going to come in into a country like India. So mass migration is the biggest fear. So the minute there is mass migration, think about food production that needs to feed such people. Think about infrastructural needs. Think about all the healthcare and other things that need to be there. The other aspect of climate change, the social aspect of it is there could be civil wars because food becomes a shortage, water becomes a shortage in the future. If we do not address the problem today. So then again, you're looking at civil wars because of these two aspects. There again, there are other issues related to this. So you could have all of these happening. Now, these are very larger issues, but then coming down to the smaller issues that could be tackled at the city level, let's look at increased temperature itself. As I said, increased temperature is a reality. It's going to definitely increase in the future. It's been clearly established that aggression is more when under a deep stressed condition, accidents in workplace, decline in physical health. Now, these are all things that as doctors you would be encountering when you start actually interacting with your patients. So obviously, things like lack of cold water, reduced ability to cool down, all of these are related. So obviously, health is at the heart of it. All of these play an important role. And of course, mental health, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, people who have lost their homes, livestock in a flooding event could be extremely stressed. So stress, grief, including people ending up harming themselves, self-harm could be a reality under the climate change situation. Now, specific impacts on women, children, and the elderly are also something that people are beginning to study because they see patterns which are emerging because of climate change that their impact would be much larger because of the biological makeup, because of the age, or because of the morbidities that exist in certain sets of population. Next. So I'm at the last slide. So what it boils down to is that a sound policy becomes very, very fundamental. A lot of the solutions is something that Dr. Lalita already talked about, so I'm not going to be touching upon them. You need to do a whole lot of things at the government level, at community level, and as individuals also. But a failure to use what we call as sustainable development policies, where we are looking at developmental aspirations that need to be met. Food, water, health, clean air is a fundamental right. Every country needs to provide for that. But there are also these climate challenges. In fact, just before coming here, I was at a meeting called by the Ministry of Environment and Forest where they were actually discussing this. India needs to develop what is called as a low carbon development strategy that it needs to submit to the UN. Now they're saying, okay, we need to develop a low carbon. When I say low carbon, which means we are reducing emissions in the future. How do our industries perform? How does power sector? Are we going to be relying on coal power or are we going to be increasing solar, wind, hydro? These are the questions that at the country level they're asking and then saying, okay, what is it that we need to do about it? How do we transition from a coal economy to a clean economy? Now, this transition is at a cost. Now, who is going to bear the cost? So these are the conversations that happen at a high level. But at the end of the day, it gets translated into implementation and reality through state governments, district authorities, sub-district authorities, communities, and finally as individuals. Now, behavioral change is a very important component of addressing climate change. Now, this behavioral change lies in you and me. We need to make the switch, be it in the use of transport, be it in what we consume. I don't know if you know that diets also contribute to emissions. Red meat contributes a lot to emissions, whereas millets, vegetarian diet could be, I'm not saying don't eat meat. And of course, red meat is not really an issue in India. It's more about, Europe, South Africa, and elsewhere. But just so you know, even a dietary change, a shift in the diets could bring about a positive change the way you are this country. So basically, we are looking at, trying to look at sustainable development in a holistic manner where you keep health also as an integral part of it because you address these problems, you are indirectly addressing the health systems. Or you address health systems, you make it much more robust, you are getting future ready. The imagined future that Dr. Lalita talked about is possible only if you can foresee what's likely to happen based on science-based evidence. I'm not saying just imagine this app, invest in it. There is enough evidence out here. There's enough science that clearly indicates what are the potential directions of change. So I think systems have to start preparing for that. Finally, I would like to leave you all with this, that there is a powerful synergy between health, environmental protection, and sustainable resource use. And societies who share the responsibility for achieving a healthy environment and manage their resources sustainably, we basically become partners in ensuring that the global system cycles, everything remains unimpaired. Basically, they are able to perform what they are doing today in a systematic manner. They continue to do what they do. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take up. As I said, I can leave the presentation if anyone is interested in looking into it. I'll leave it with Dr. Shanti and you could always take it from her. Any questions? What I said was very clear, or everything was a fixer. What is it? It's okay. I'm just joking. It's the season of the IPL, so obviously I have to get a cricket joke in between, right? All right. Thank you.
And I think when we know there is strategy and the impact on health, it's really valuable. Thank you so much. What's your name? Vaishnavi. Now, I welcome our dynamic principal and dean, Ramaiah Medical College. Now, I welcome our dynamic principal and dean, Ramaiah Medical College, Dr. Veera Roy Rao, ma'am, to share a few reflections about the day.
Good afternoon. At the outset, collectively, on behalf of the management and all of us who are assembled here, a very big thank you to Madam Dr. Indu.
I'm Indu with no Mati.
So I said Indu Murthy, the Murthy was slightly silent. Truly, this has been a very enriching experience for all of us this afternoon. They may have been knowledgeable about a few streets of what's happening world over regarding climate change. But this was the required depth we needed at this point of time. The point of time when WHO has declared its theme and directed it completely towards the medical profession. So, Madam, once again, a very big thank you for enlightening us. There's been a spin-off of this also. That's actually given us a very heavy reminder about your responsibility. Collectively, a lot of people, organizations, governments are trying their best to politicize and see if things can get better by the day, with all frameworks written down, the contributions made by countries, some of them cooperating completely at all the forums, be it Copenhagen or Paris. Some vow to do a lot of things, even newer things like encouraging alternate energy, etc. And India has been there, very steadily participating and trying its best in many ways. What does this tell us? There seems to be an individual responsibility as well. Let's not forget that we've always learned as children, little drops of water make a mighty ocean. So based on that, at least let's first recognize the individual role in contributing to protection of the environment. This is no small thing. I don't have to be the Prime Minister to do this job. I have a role to play. And I say so confidently because I have experienced the seasons changing, the environment looking different, the rise of temperatures. As children, we saw more sparrows, and I haven't seen for many years now. And I really feel my perception, I can be happy to be wrong, but perception is we don't see too many crows, we see pigeons more than crows. So there are some observations like this, but we all have a role, and that is a given. I say so because of my 68 years of experiencing the climate change steadily worsening. This has been very nice to see all the knowledge which Madam shared with us. But there was an equally long list of mental health problems, and that's a huge worry. I know this would instill a bit of a scare in every one of us. But please remember, to be precise, about 48 and a half years ago, when I was in your position, my first class on genetics, the statement which was made, you as a product, as a human being, as a product, is a direct product of your genetic framework and environment. So you see the important role of environment in designing what you are going to become. So this itself says the magnitude of the responsibility we have to share to protect the environment. So that said, today calls for a few things. Number one, it calls for saying that we should introspect. I will introspect. How much of a culprit have I been in contributing to the environment health? And what I need to do in future doesn't matter even if I have a minuscule role. This is the time for all of us, very appropriately, to pledge to our own selves that I shall not yield to my temptation to do anything that would go against the health of the environment. Is the next thing we want. 3, join hands with the policymakers to comply what is mandated. It's been observed that there is a level of compliance only when it becomes a law. Let's not wait for that mandate. Let's mandate it for our own selves. That's point number 3. Last but not the least, let's not be just critical. Let's not be just observing what's happening around us, but actively contribute our mind. So this, I think, is our new role from today. We as an organizations will put in the efforts to see what we can do. But as I already said, organizations, governments, countries are doing their best, but every human being needs to contribute in the self-interest. It's been, I said some time ago that it is how productive we are going to be. But at my level, it is, am I going to survive? If the environment is unhealthy, am I going to survive? And that's a very touchy question. And that must infuse a new enthusiasm in every one of us to put forth our might. Dr. Lalita was mentioned in Madam's talk more than 3-4 times, and I'm also going to mention. She gave out a very elaborate plan as to what needs to be done. I was just looking at that great plan. Whether good she's come ready with the plan to be implemented. And very soon my happiness went down because she quickly took a 180 turn, looked at me and said that Madam will do this. So let me use this opportunity, and everybody is going to agree with me that since Dr. Lalita is already ready with the plan, I am very generously giving her the responsibility to carry out the plan and implement whatever she has said, which means Dr. Lalita and her team will commit to that plan and see that this is implemented and sustained. And I'm pretty sure she's very, very happy that I have given her an extra responsibility. And that said, wishing all of you very good health and all of you the right commitment which you're going to have. Good luck to everyone. Have a healthy lifestyle. Thank you very much.
For inspiring us. And from now on, at least I hope we will do our part to protect our Earth. To implement these, we now call upon our young minds to share with us perspective about this year's World Health Day. Now, I would like to call upon Indu K to speak a few words about his perspective of World Health Day. Sanjeev?
Good afternoon to one and all present here. Much of the points have been already discussed by our Hindu ma'am and Meda ma'am. So I would like to keep my speech brief. Yes, we all know that health is the basic right of every human being on this planet, and that the impact of environmental change on human health has gained immense popularity in the recent past. Health is being threatened by, as I would quote Sir David Attenborough, he says that there are 3 biggest threats in the history of mankind. One is climate change, second is biodiversity loss, and third is global warming. WHO estimates that about 13 million deaths worldwide occur every year because of avoidable environmental crisis. Just to share a few examples, air pollution causes a lot of chronic respiratory illnesses, from COPD to asthma to lung cancer to coronary artery disease and to stroke. Food crisis, on one hand, is causing undernutrition. On the other hand, consumption of excess of processed food in turn is causing obesity, hypertension, coronary artery diseases, and strokes. Increasing deforestation is increasing the interaction between man and animal, increasing the risk of zoonotic diseases. And as man said, people migrate from areas of unfavorable climate and come to urban areas in search of jobs and to stay. And this leads to creation of slums. And we all know the impact of slum. Acute diarrheal disease outbreak, acute respiratory diseases outbreak. All this happening because people don't have access to basic life needs like safe supply of food and safe supply of drinking water. And the most recent finding that the World Meteorological Organization showed was the presence of microplastics in human blood. It was a study that was launched 2 weeks ago, telling that there were significant quantities of polystyrene and polyethylene, the ones that we use for packaging food materials and the one that we use to carry polythene bags. Nobody knows what are the long-term effects of such microplastics in human blood. So, very soon, like how we have been talking about war refugees in the recent past, we'll be talking about climate refugees, people migrating from one place to another just because they don't have they have unfavorable climate over there, and that they're no longer able to adapt in such a place. Now, what is the solution to all this? Reduction in the impact that you create on the environment is the most important thing. The COVID pandemic has taught us a lot of importance of what is the importance of individual. Unless the individual wore masks, unless the individual avoided social gatherings, unless the individual went and got himself voluntarily vaccinated, we couldn't have the situation under control. So obviously, we know that the individual plays a very, very important role in reducing the impact that we have on our environment. Say, for example, just before someone gets into a car, if they think, can I walk to this place? Can I use a public transport? Imagine the amount of burden that comes down in burning fossil fuels and decrease in air pollution. When someone just mindlessly leaves on a electric bulb or just mindlessly switches on a fan, one can think, what is the burden that I'm creating on the power producing units? How much of fossil fuel is being burned? Or just when someone leaves food on their plate, think about how much of burden that I'm creating on the food producing system. How much of that is being affected in order to increase food production by increasing land clearance or increasing water consumption for irrigation. So what I'm trying to tell is the individual becomes very important. The equation is very simple. The lesser we consume, we have lesser impact, lesser production, demand, and we'll have a healthier environment, which equals a healthier us. So we can all agree that yes, we are at the tipping point, that if we do not act quickly, we will be definitely facing the 6th mass extinction, as one would say, by the end of the century. So I would urge all of you just to be mindful about your daily activities. Just before you perform something, think of question yourself. What is this activity having an impact on the environment? By doing so, I think so collectively we can all reverse this process. And in fact, it's not too late if we act quickly. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. I'd like to call upon Ambika Almondre, third student. Is she here?
Good afternoon to one and all present here. I am Ambika Almaje, and I feel immense pleasure to be here before all of you to talk on the occasion of World Health Day. World Health Day, the 3 words, What do you understand out of it? Okay, let's take two words out of it, that is world and health. What do we understand by world and health? Of course, every one of us know what it means individually, but let's think different. Let's interconnect them, and now let's try to understand what it means. My dear friends, according to World Health Organization, that is WHO, it has completely focused on the interconnection between our planet and our health. Our planet, a rocky planet in one solar system, in one galaxy among billions. It sounds interesting. Now, let me talk about our world. According to Worldometer, today's or current world population is 7.9 billion. But I really feel sad to mention that the majority of the population among this 7.9 billion population concentrate on the word R. So I basically want to tell that people are concentrating on the things that relates to them instead of being concerned of those things that relates to them. Now you might be thinking that, of course, if we talk about health, everyone is concerned about their health because after all, health is everything for us. But the question is when? In the beginning or in the end? And majority of the people do concentrate on their health in the end in today's generation. Now, I would like to mention the I would like to mention few messages which was taught by Indu Murthy ma'am, and I feel that it's important to be mentioned. Um, Climate change. It is the biggest crisis today's world is facing. By climate change, it is expected approximately 2.5 lakh deaths per year, either due to malaria or malnutrition or health stress, and it goes on and on. What else do we have to expect now? There is environment has been changed, climate has been changed, and climate change has a direct impact on our health. My dear friends, there will be a day in future that if we keep exploiting continuously the way it is going on, there will be oxygen bottles sold in the market. Forget about the future. Just right now, if you Google or if you check on Amazon or Flipkart, you get oxygen sprays. Where have we landed up that oxygen sprays are sold in the market? My dear friends, our planet is if our planet is healthy, then we are healthy. Today, it's being 21st century. In 21st century, we are facing so many problems. What about our future generation? Do our future generation deserve this? They have to roam around with oxygen bags. Is this what we have to give to our future generation? Of course not. We have to take care of it. There's a saying that our action decides our fate. So please take care of your actions. We have to be aware that our planet, which we consider as our Earth, our Mother Earth, do not really require people, but we people are completely dependent on our Mother Earth, and we should really take care of our Mother Earth. Thank you. A very happy health day to everyone.
Thank you. Spiritually, let's do that. Speech and 96 points as one.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Surya Pradeep, and honestly, it's very assuring to have speakers like Dr. Indu Murthy and Dr. Medha who give us such an assurance that plans are set in motion and they are to be implemented. However, all of us here just even Dr. Sanjay showed us the importance of the individual. That is the point that I would like to stress upon. The power lies with us. Without the initiation, according to me, the foremost important aspect of carrying out any objective is the initiative to go forth with it. All it takes is one person to start laying the brick. That is all we need. That is the beauty in people. All we need is one person to start taking the break, and everyone else will start to follow. I mean, if you think about it, what can a boy 19 years old who weighs 78 kilograms do much of it? Well, the truth is not much, but with people by his side, he can do quite a lot. And Dr. Indu Murthy also talked about many ways in which the environment is influenced our health. In fact, in current day and times, our health is so closely intertwined with our environment that it is impossible to separate the two aspects. As a result, it is our duty as youngsters to start with initiatives and to carry on many more objectives that we can think of. And the first step to doing this is by starting out and holding open discussions with each other as to how we can better the society as well as the environment. We are social beings. I'd like to quote something I just heard today in today's class. It was from the movie Ash Adams. He said every human being has an impact on each other. And that is what I'd like to stress upon. Each and every one of us, when we interact with each other, have an impact on them. That is the message that I'd like to give all of you. If one of us takes the initiative, be it as small as it may, planting trees, picking up a stray coke can and throwing it in the garbage bin, it can be anything. Even being nice to your friends is an impact. That is what I would like to tell all of you. And thank you, Dr. Indranodi, and thank you, Dr. Principal. I always enjoy his speeches.
Thank you, Suri. We invite all the dignitaries back into the dais, please.
Thank you for all the young students talking and inspiring yourselves. I take from here the madam's directions. I will lead by taking man behind me and I have a young host in front of me who will take it forward.
Don't keep passing the buck.
No, I'm just leading there. And we have a strong echo club. We'll just strengthen it and work towards step by step. Thank you very much.
Asia World Health Day, we from the Department of Community Medicine had organized a registration and elocution competition for the medical graduates, undergraduates, interns, and postgraduates on 5th and 6th of April 2022, respectively. Though the participant entries were less, we were overwhelmed to witness the talent at their speech and sketching. We would like to congratulate all the participants for their positive attitude and for showcasing such an amazing performance. So now we move on to the prize distribution part, and I request Dr. Indu K Murthy to hand over the certificates to the prize winners. First prize for elocution, Dr. Sanjay K. Kiran. Congrats, Dr. Sanjay. Now, announcing the winners for pencil sketch competition, we have three of them. First prize, Rajita from first term. Second prize, Rajana Reddy from fifth term. Sparsha Harvu from third term.
ಸಂಜನಾತಿ ಇದಾ ಇದಾ
Now, I would like to invite Dr. Megha Roy Rao, Principal and Dean, Ramaiah Medical College, to hand over certificates to the constituents. I would like to call upon Shifali from the first term. Rida Yash from fifth term. Bhakti Bhagat from first term. Darshina A from first term. Sanjana Sandali from first term. I would like to invite Dr. Shamli C. going back to hand over the certificate. Participants. Surya Pradeep, first term. Ambika Almaji from third term. Dwayne Nagar from third term. Kavya G from fifth term. And Hannah Janak from third term. Congratulations to all the prize winners and participants. At the same time, requesting for more participants for the upcoming events. I would like to now welcome Dr. Pavitra Shelvaraj, Assistant Professor, Department of Community Medicine, and the coordinator for this year's World Health Day 2022, to deliver the word of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Aishwarya. Warm afternoon for all present here. Gratitude is the memory of the heart. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this event to all the ones who are assembled here. I would like to thank our guest speaker, Dr. Indu K Murthy, for sparing her valuable time and sharing her insights on this year's theme. I would like to thank our guest of honor, CE Medical, GF Medical, Shri M. Srinivas Murthy sir, for his support in conducting this event. I would like to thank our beloved principal, Dr. Meera Vairama, for his zeal to inspire the young minds. I would like to extend my gratitude to our Vice Principal Academics, Dr. Shani Chandrasekhar Nuni ma'am, and our Registrar Administration, Dr. Hemant Tapsi sir, for their support. I'd like to thank GF Medical HR Legal, Srivara sir, CFO, Mr. Venugopal Shastri sir, for sparing their time and being part of this event. I would like to thank the judges, Dr. Kuku Ayappa, Dr. Jyoti, Dr. Likita, Mr. Anand, who have judged the session for consist teaching and education competition. I extend my thanks and gratitude to Mr. Ravi and Ms. Vaishnavi from EDP for being responsible for smooth functioning of this event. Without my department's support, this would not have been possible. I thank Dr. Lalita, Professor and Head Department of Community Medicine,
my colleagues, postgraduates, and the supporting staff in making this event successful. Last but not the least, our beloved students, the audience, and also the faculty who have taken part in this event. I thank one and all. Once again, thanks for being a part of this event. Thank you.
Now, I would like to invite Dr. Vedabai Rao ma'am to hand over a token of love to Dr. Indu K Murthy. Now that we have come to the end of the program, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all who have gathered over here, requesting all to please stand up for our national anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Refreshments served outside, please.
Highlight of the event.
Please take madam some water glass.
Like that.
Date. ಇದು